for everyone else. Oh, hi guys!
Hi!
Right, we're in. It's early morning. I've already seen the deer in the woods this morning. I've had caffeine to drink.
I'm halfway through my caffeine.
You?
Yes.
Different caffeines.
Yeah.
We are going to have a chat about the broadest of topics. We're going to talk about planning.
Planning, exciting, yay!
The joy of all the teachers going, yes, planning!
Woo.
I love planning.
Oh. It'll be fun. It'll be fun. Trust us.
It's different planning, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I think that's maybe the biggest thing that I would say to people. You know, when you meet someone and they not a forest school person and they ask you about like, oh, how did you get into this? What did you do? And planning is sometimes the biggest thing that they're like, oh, is it like teaching or what makes? I go, do you know what? You could spend. You just have that. Have you heard the Alexander principle that a job will take up as much time as you give it? Yeah. And I always found teaching planning was like that.
Yep.
Like in the summer holidays, I would spend 6 weeks almost planning like the first week.
Yep.
And then, you know, when you need to, you can plan an entire day in 20 minutes.
Yeah, completely. And depending on what mood you're in, so if you're like really on one and then you get in a kind of like, especially like internet rabbit hole thing
Pinterest.
of just like, well, I don't know, I guess I was in secondary, so it's not so much Pinterest, but like you're reading something and you're like, oh yeah, it'd be great to include that. Oh, hang on, let's look at this and add this. And then you realise that actually you're just entertaining yourself and it's nothing really necessarily to do with the kids. But yeah, that is absolutely true about the whole, it will take as long as...
It will take as long as it needs, but also then when I was teaching, there's that thing where the more time you've invested in a plan,
the more you want to stick to it.
The more you want to stick.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you've just invested, haven't you? Yeah. And when you see the kids asking stuff or not being interested, the selfish part of your brain, I think, or of my brain at least, used to look at that and go, no, this took 2 hours. You're not allowed to be interested in that bit of it. You have to be doing, you know.
Oh yeah.
And that's the biggest thing.
Well, it's even more in secondary because you've only got between 45 minutes and an hour with that class. So if you've spent a long time planning something and you're really invested in it, and you can then see that you've pitched it wrong, or today is not the day for this, or they want to take it in a different direction, you just simply don't have the time to do that and then drop everything and go, you know, by the time you've done that and worked out actually what you're going to do instead, the lesson's over. So you are completely wedded to that idea. You've got to follow through, and that's where a lot of the disciplines crap happens, the behaviour issues, because you basically end up, so if it goes disastrously wrong and they don't want to do what you planned or want to do it differently, that is when you end up in that thing of like, just do what I say. Doesn't matter what you think, just for now you need to do what I say. Oh, now you're rocking on your chair and throwing something across the room, now you're getting out. So that is, you know, where that stuff happens, where here in the woods our sessions are 2 hours at a minimum, sometimes all day, and so it really doesn't matter if, I mean, there are times where numerous times aren't there, where we go away and plan something and then you're like, oh, not today.
Yeah.
Not today. I've laminated quite a few resources for this for once. Actually,
I just barely laminate anything now.
I know.
You talking about secondary teachers reminded me. There's a YouTuber and a podcaster called CGP Grey who used to be a secondary physics teacher, and he said he got to the point where he was one of these people that, you know, had planned out the entire year. But like down to he then taught for like 6 or 7 years or something, and he'd done it all in year one, so he could just wake up and go, I know this thing. But he said he also used to, he talks a lot about teaching being an act, you know, persona. And he said he would intentionally plan his lessons with fake tangents, so that he would say something slightly interesting, but then would say to them like, "Oh, I don't know if we have time for that. If you want me to, we can go off on a little tangent for 10 minutes, but then we'll have to work really hard at the end to pitch it up."
Wow.
And it was on his plan.
Oh my
so he'd
God,
know,
that's really
like, he was like, I know ahead of time that, like, I can get him to do all of that. And it was like a fake, like, oh, you think I'm being really cheeky and you think I've given you the best. Actually,
you think I'm being spontaneous.
Yeah. And that the kids would, like, suddenly be really interested if they thought they had won, if you know what I mean. So just being like, oh, you know, it could be like, oh, I can't talk to you about the answers for next week's that what you'll need to study, and they go, oh, go on please, and he'd literally have written his plan like kids will say, oh, go on please. Very interesting. But we're not here to talk about teacher planning.
No,
we're here to talk about forest school planning. So but that is circling back to what I was going to say, which is that like my planning now has become so, I was going to say it's loose and it's abstract, but it's not. It's more seasonal.
Yeah.
And it's more like having a big seasonal bag in my head of like, these are the things that are kind of opportunities that are open to us at the moment.
Yep.
And so I'm not at all concerned if the kids choose option C over option D. Mm-hmm. Doesn't make any odds or ends. You're completely open to go with it. The only time I ever have to say to a group, oh, can't actually do that, is like when last week, so what was that, like the first week in January, I mentioned that we could you could drill into a tree and drink it, and the kids were like, we should do that now, and actually having to explain like, well, but then it's not me saying like, no, that's not on the plan. It's the world saying, it's nature going, just steady on, just
it's not available.
It's not available to you right now,
but it will be. Yeah. I was thinking about the planning that we do in advance compared to the planning we do in the moment. I don't even know if you can still call it planning if it's in the moment. I'm gonna say you can. But the seasonal things definitely, and as you get into the kind of rhythm of the seasons and know the site really well, then you know that in February kind of time, this is an activity that other groups have enjoyed, so maybe this one will too, and we'll offer it. And definitely we do another type of planning, don't we, where we meet a group and after the session we'll reflect on what's happened in the session,
who the group are, what's
gone down, and then perhaps what they need. So in that way, forest school planning can be so child-centred, and you're working with a smaller group as well than comparing it to a class of 30 in a regular school,
or adult-centred.
Sometimes
we do talk about and we go, do you know what, I think this group of adults, you go, there's the kids on what, so I was just in my head, I was thinking, how do I think about the you were saying like the seasonal thing and the site, and it goes in circles, and in my head I think of it as concentric gears. So I have the short 6-week, okay, this is a half-term block, and I'm going to meet a new group, and I'm going to get to know each other, and then you're going that, and then on the bigger scale there's the season, and then on an even bigger scale there's the, you go up and up and up, and eventually you're looking at the like woodland management of like, we've just cut down 5 trees down in the bottom to do some coppicing, well, more than 5 trees, but a load of trees to do some coppicing, and so at the moment there's a lot of timber. But if you wait in a little bit, in the middle of summer, and the kids will go, can we do that? And I go, well, no, because it's not the right time. I think of them as concentric gears moving round.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking about it.
And you see people move. Well, it's a bit like those calendars, isn't it? Have you seen the Celtic calendars and the...
No.
It's gone now. Coyote Guide has the 8 compass points, but also talks about them being cycles of like reflection and planning and preparation, and you go through those things, and each time you experience resting again, you're resting as a completely different person, and then you go through the whole cycle again, and actually you're resting and reflecting this time, and you're doing all those things, and that's I feel like forest school planning is more cyclical than state education planning, which was A to B,
linear.
Yeah. I have to get you to here, whereas forest school has that, even in the course of a session, 2-hour session is that tiniest gear even, and you go, I missed you, you didn't quite take part in the welcome circle, and you go, okay, cool, because I'm going to get you again. I get you again. That's a very manipulative way of looking at it, isn't it? Like, you'll get that,
give you the opportunity.
That opportunity will present itself to you again, whereas if you're doing linear planning and thinking of like childhood and child development in a linear sense, and you go, they missed doing that schema when they were 5, they weren't allowed to throw, they'll never get a chance. No, they're on cycles, they'll get a chance to do it again. Just relax and know that's the biggest sort of, I think, weight off my mind, is knowing okay, it'll come round
there's
again.
no deadline.
There isn't a deadline.
There's no deadline.
Yeah, that's a nice way of thinking about it.
Yeah. And the fact that some of our children have been with us for such a long time only exaggerates that, doesn't it? It's, you've got endless opportunities to do a certain thing. So I guess going back to talking about the group. No, that's all right. And reflecting. I think we've moved to a point now where we don't need to write things down because we're together so much both before and after the sessions that we can kind of like offload and discuss and plan verbally after a session.
And there's that element of like you say, working together, what are we, 5 days a week?
Yeah.
And we've now been doing this together 3 years. It's that like work wife thing where I know I don't need to say to you, he could do with some more opportunities to that, because I know you all have seen it as well.
Yeah.
I know, but we both just then go away and one of us go, oh, I thought of that thing for so and so.
Yeah.
And then you go, oh right, cool. You didn't need to say to each other, can we think of a thing? You're just both aware of it.
It might be worth it. We use an app called Discord for our kind of work communication, which I really like now. It was your suggestion, and we tried out some other ones, didn't we? We're doing a lot through Facebook Messenger, which was horrible. And what was the other one we used?
Slack's not massively dissimilar to Discord, but it was again thinking about cycles. It was the wrong time in the company's flow to introduce something like that.
Yeah.
Because I think whereas now, because we had been doing things on Facebook, and I think it had got to the point where everyone was a little frustrated that because you only have one chat or one Facebook group, you lose things, and also that muddling of work and social life.
Yeah, completely.
And being like, oh, you want to, sometimes you go, oh, I'm going to go on and just check that there's nothing on the work thing, and you get distracted by, oh, hey, it's Sarah's birthday next week. I should do this, and so you go down that. And also the other side where you're sat watching TV and absolutely monging out and just scrolling through Facebook, and then it pops up with like, hey, more jobs.
Yeah.
The James Acaster, more jobs.
Yeah, no more jobs.
No more jobs. More jobs.
Yeah, so Discord's good because we've got different threads for different things. So we've got a thread for for each of our sessions, whatever homemade plans.
It's like a forum, isn't it, with all the different forum
and so
topics.
if we have a little brain fart about like, oh, that would be good for that person, or I've seen this, we should try that, then we can just pop it in there, and then other people can see it at their leisure. And I think that's a really good kind of holding place for those ideas.
It's a big shared notepad, isn't it?
Yeah.
That we can all just, like you say, you can drop it in there when it suits you, but everyone else can look at it when it suits them.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
So far, everybody's pretty. We haven't had anything where you have to say to someone, "Oh, you need to check it every whatever," because and also the stuff that's in it is so low key. You know, what did I put in the other day? I just at like 9 o'clock at night, I just went like, "Oh, I reckon those girls need to play cafe." These, they're like 9-year-old girls, and I just suddenly went, "Oh, here it is. They need to set up a cafe. They keep making drinks and they keep bringing them to everyone." But I was like, that gives them a job and it does this, and that's what we're going to do next time. And it was literally just
build them a cafe.
Yeah, you're going to build them a cafe, and that's what I think they'll do. Let's try that. Bang.
Yeah.
But if they turn up and doesn't work, cool.
Yeah.
What have I spent? I've spent 2 sentences. I got it straight out of my head.
That's the thing, isn't it? It's about so I guess planning for the soft skills. So knowing the children, thinking, what are they going to gain from this, how can I support them in these kind of soft areas of learning. A lot of the time our planning is based on, I would say, and then not being attached to the plans. So do you remember I was looking at the it was like a play conference coming up in, I think, like Sussex or Brighton.
Right.
I think we've kind of decided not to go, but I would like to go sometime. And to be a participant in the play conference, you can submit an idea and prepare a workshop or a talk or something. But I really loved the way it said on the site, you can plan your contribution however you like, and you get there on the day and you could put up your little poster or whatever saying this is what you're going to do, and nobody might show up. you got to take that on the chin. It's just, that's your risk, because just the same way as we would plan for the kids, and you plan this thing, and then that day they don't want to do it. It's child-led. It's completely free.
Someone has.
Nobody chooses at that time. Just swallow it. Don't worry about it. Don't get proud. Just take it on the chin, and that's what might happen. And I really like the way that they kind of put that in the adult world, when we're so used to doing it with children, and it equally applies to adults. And I thought that's a really different way of looking at training. If you imagine any other kind of career where you go on a day of training, like teaching, and everything was completely optional, and there might be a person who'd planned loads of stuff, and they just go, oh, not appropriate for anyone today, never mind, I'm not going to force anybody to do it, it's not my place to do that. People can decide their own learning.
And I think there's I have two thoughts that I want to come back to one about a different toddler group in a minute, but I guess one of those things is that if having been through, I'm on a John Gatto kick this morning, so this is what's coming up. Having been through state education, you're kind of encouraged in group settings to assume that you should just sit quietly, because this might be really useful for someone else.
Yeah.
To not speak your was it Marshall Rosenberg and say, actually, this isn't meeting any of my needs. Do you mind if I step out for a bit? Yeah. You're encouraged to sit there and go. You could have a room of 15 people, all of whom think, well, I bet someone, I know this, but I bet someone else is getting something out of it. Which is a big thing that kids, in some ways, their worldview of, particularly early on, kids having that worldview of like, but I am the world, works in their advantage, because they'll just, you go to a toddler group and you, for the most part, unless you absolutely cajole them, they'll just go, this story is not interesting to me. Yeah. I am going to go bang this pot.
I'm just going to leave.
Because they just go, well, actually, I have a need to bang a pot right now. Yeah. So, and then, it's one bit of it. Yeah. Sorry, did you want to?
Oh, well, I just wanted to say that one of the parents from the kindergarten gave us that feedback the other day, which surprised me and pleased me, and said, what she said, one of the things that I really like about you guys is that you don't cajole children to make them join in.
That's a good word.
And I was like, oh, okay. And she kind of expanded on it, and she said, they get cajoled in every other area of their life. They get cajoled at home, they'll get cajoled at other toddler groups and at school and all that kind of thing. Even if it is really well-meaning and friendly and like, oh, come on, try this, you might enjoy it. Go on, give it a go.
The tone is nicer, but the message is still
come and play with everybody else. Come on, come over here. And that we don't really do that. If somebody wants to just walk off and not join in, that's fine.
As long as they're not hurting themselves.
Yeah, and the only people that hurt sometimes is our feelings. Like if we've gone, we've planned this new song and we've learned how to do the song and let's do singing, and then like
they all stand up, put their fingers on their
they go, no, stop singing, and a particularly influential child goes, this is no good, let's go, come on guys, and they're all like, yeah. I'm like, oh, okay, and my feelings aren't hurt, honestly. No, but
so but actually that ties in really nicely. So I was reading something the other day about, and it's a bit of an experience that you could look at two ways. And so there's a toddler group where one of the, like a church hall, stay and play, loosely maybe there's a structure, but compared to say forest school where it's like there is definitely a theme to coming here. Yeah. It's just we've put toys out in the village hall, would you like to come? Yeah. And apparently towards the end there's a lady who arrives, gets out a guitar and sings some songs for and with the children. Yeah. The quality of which need not be discussed. Yeah. But it was an interesting point of is the right thing to do to model sort of respect for someone is performing an art. Yeah. It is I'm using air quotes here. Yeah. Polite thing to do to go over, that person's taking some time, they're showing a thing and they're doing whatever. Yeah. That is one way of looking at it. Yeah, yeah. So you can model that and you can cajole and say, right, actually, you don't get to choose right now, we are going to sit and we are going to listen and do whatever. I sided very much with the other side of that, the sort of way of looking at it, if you like, where I was looking at it, and some other people were as well, and saying, you have stormed into children's play space. Yeah. You have not asked if this is appropriate, if this, they're so they are literally mid-play, and you set up and you go, all attention must be paid to me, because I have decided. No concept of like, have they finished their play cycles? Is this an appropriate thing? And when I was reading some things about adventure playgrounds, the early adventure playgrounds, and how they this is a sneaky bit of what we're going to talk about next week in the book, and saying that actually one of the things that the guy who set up an adventure playground didn't like was that it became such a community hub that the police and the social workers knew that they could come in and find the children, and that the children then were reluctant to use the space because it becomes a place where you go, right, well, the adults know we're here, it's not a safe space, and saying that the police and the social workers wouldn't come in and say, do you mind if we come in? We'd like to try and find Gemma, all these things. They would just go, right, we have a right to come and find. And I was thinking of that. It's like, not only is it a physical thing to set up and go, I'm going to play here, but as someone who did music, and I have a particular interest, I think, in sound and audio and that kind of experience. Sound is a thing. You can close your eyes, you can move away, you can't close your ears. And that's one of the things that's always struck me, is like, sound is such a pervasive and annoying thing because you don't get to control it, short of putting your hands on your ears, and then that's seen as even more rude, rather than saying, no, you're making sound that's entering my world. I haven't. You can close your eyes and not give someone permission to be in your sight. You can move away, and in most situations you can move away and say, no, that touch sensation is not something I want in my world right now. But sound is something that you
Never
cannot.
Thought about that before.
It's horrible once you, and especially when you start thinking in terms of like, you go in a shop and the shop decides what you hear. But sorry, this is going back to planning and thinking, do you have a right to step in on play space and just go like, planning says this, I think, and
I guess the good thing, following on from my box, I thought it was an interesting one. The good thing about our site is that people they can escape. It's big enough and there's enough variation of terrain that if you really don't want to hear singing right now, you can go down the hill into the treehouse down the bottom and you won't hear it. You'll hear it very, very, very faintly in the distance. Which some children do, don't they? They do. They hear that we're going to do it, and they're like, "No, don't want to," and that's completely fine. I really like the way the other day that thinking about the difference between a toddler group where it is widely accepted that the leader of the session has gone, it's story time now, everyone, gather round, and you as a parent, because of that social
hold on to your child.
You go, okay, we're putting these toys down now, and we're all going to go and listen to the story. And our site being a bit different, and you very clearly broadcasted that on Wednesday and said, I'm going to tell a story. If you want to listen, it's long, if you want to listen, you can listen. If you want to listen for a bit and then stop listening and go and walk and play in the mud kitchen or do something else, I really won't mind. That is completely fine. If you don't even want to come listen, that's completely fine too. And I thought that was really nice for the parents. Like, that's again a bit of theatre, isn't it, where you're kind of talking to the kids, but actually you're talking to the grown-ups and making it clear that we don't expect everyone to drop everything if they don't want to. And sometimes it's the children that you don't expect that do sit and go, okay, no, I'm going to listen it out, I'm going to wait to the end and laugh.
It just turned up right at the end, didn't it? This little boy was playing, I think he was within earshot, without a doubt. But
he's very little, and just came over
at the end, and it wasn't even one. Some stories end with like a punchline, don't they? Or and it was the bear all along or something. But he just arrived and just burst out laughing.
It's very, thinking about it from a kind of parent side of things. That is a challenging thing with anything you do with your kid, where it's I really, for example, really enjoy like the singing and the story part of any kind of like organised kids activity, and so I just selfishly I do want to sit and listen to the story, and I wonder for a lot of children they might kind of need you right next to them all the time, but like you were saying about modelling like acceptable social behaviour and go, I'm going to pay respect to this person if they're doing this. Because there is some value in that. If
that's what I mean. It's a perfectly valid way to think.
And I guess there are times where you can go, well, do you know what? I am a person, I'm a human, and I'm going to explain to your child, I really want to, so I'm going to go and listen to the story, and you can go and play over there if you want to, but I'm going to do this. And I think the parents that have been coming to us for a while do that a bit, and they might take part in a craft activity that their child doesn't want to take part in, but they will begin to have the confidence to say, that's okay, I really want to have a go at this, I want to learn weaving or whatever.
And I think so, following on from that, there's as much value, I would say, in a child having a craft activity that is accessible to them, and it's equally valid to have a craft that isn't quite accessible to them, so maybe slightly out of their reach, but stood next to their parent doing that craft. That is as valuable as going, oh, we'll we'll simplify it so that they can do it. And you go, well, actually, they won't get there because they want to see you be interested in a thing, and they want to see you try the. And I was reading the other day about competency models, and how siblings are better competency models than parents, because if you are an older sibling, basically for the younger sibling, everything you do is in that ZPD zone of proximal development. In that, if a 6-year-old watches an adult do some writing, far out of their reach, can't access it. But if a 6-year-old watches a 7-year-old do some writing, it's just enough of a stretch that they go, oh, I could probably do that. And thinking in terms of when we do stuff as adults, going, right, is what I'm doing one step more accessible for them? Like, am I modelling? Because sometimes you just go like, okay, I'm going to make dinner. I'm not going to make sandwiches every day because that's what's partially accessible to them. But thinking in terms of, and this ties into planning, is when we think about. So Gemma is sat here carving a spoon right now, and we had a boy on Tuesday carving a spoon. But I think you did some carving with him. Well,
I was going to talk about that today because another type of planning, kind of, is so we've got some children who come all day, and it's an established group, and some of them are coming for a long time, and I'd say sometimes there are not biggest planning challenge, but that's we talk about planning for that group quite a lot. I'd say they are the group who vary the most in terms of I was saying about different people going through the cycle. They vary in terms of not who physically turns up, but emotionally and socially, who turns up every week. Is you go, oh, okay, half of you have had a really bad day yesterday, and so what I've planned is not going to be appropriate. Or you go, do you know what, we're going to plan something that's got lots of structure and lots of this, and then they turn up and they go, actually no, we're fine today. We just want to play with each other and this imaginary thing that we've come up with. That's what I would say they are the most. Sometimes they're very independent, individual planning. And sometimes they need a lot of adult support, and so it's always you turn up going, I just don't know what we're going to get today completely. And so and the previous week I just had like a bit of a rubbishy day. I'd just been really cold and really I didn't feel engaged in anything that the
Your bank account was empty.
My bank account was empty. I just felt like I had one of those kind of days that we all have as a practitioner, where you're just like, I feel like I'm literally here to like get stuff out of a box and give it to you, because you're just like, I need this, I need this, I need this. Can you get me this now? I'm bored of this. Can you get me this? I don't want to. I just was very marginal the whole day, and I just felt really rubs. And so I brought a bit of carving, and some kids wanted some support, some firelighting down the bottom, so gave them that support, and then sat back and also to give me something to do so that I wasn't kind of taking over there. I was just like, okay, I'm here.
Was this yesterday? On Tuesday? Yeah.
And so I just got my spoon out and started carving, and then one of the children saw me doing it. I was like, oh, can I do that? And that was the springboard. That's what he needed, actually, was not me going, hey everybody, we're going to do some whittling today. Let's make a spoon. He just needed, and I thought that was a really nice thing to remember, that sometimes we might think, oh, that's kind of a selfish thing to do for me to just get out my own little project. But if it's if it's another way, it's a way of introducing something, isn't it? Just to quietly, without any comment, get something out and start doing it. And I think you do that quite a lot. I think you're really good at doing that. And then and then the children that are interested will gravitate towards it and go,
I think I try and find,
I've
in my head started thinking, particularly with some of the more self-sufficient groups, like the Saturday and the Tuesday group, and thinking in terms of it like, they are here to spend a day with us in the woods. And with is I feel like that important word, because it's equally as important for them to say being with us means I have some jobs to do. I've got some projects that I'm going to get on with.
Do.
And I think partly it's a like modelling seasonal. These are the things in a woodland management, and we had a little spree, didn't we, before Christmas, where we cut down quite a few trees, and the kids, the home ed kids, really liked going around and go, oh, that one's dead, let's mark it up, and can we cut that one down, and how do you fell it, and all those things. But I think the other part of that is, and I've seen, I think it's on Lily's playworking kindling thing, where she had written on her fingers, why are you talking now?
Oh yeah.
And that idea of just like every time you go to say something, to interrupt, to just go, why are you doing that?
Yeah.
And so part of me having those projects is me going, no, I don't need to. It's a bit of like handy, busy, worky.
Yeah.
Just like, okay, if I had nothing to, if I stood dead still now, I couldn't help myself. I would be going, guys, do you want to dig? Oh, actually, try not to. If you use the shovel like that. So part of it is me going, I'm going to do something nearby. It's useful, and it meets all those needs and purposes, and actually,
and meets your needs as a practitioner as well, because that's how to you get burnt out if, like, say, your bank account's empty because you're never invested in something that you want to do. And it's I think I forget that sometimes that we have a need to feel like we're doing something. Well, for me, it's like something creative, really.
I think that's what goes into my, as I said at the start, that those bags of opportunities, and just as that can be a seasonal, we could tap trees right now, it could also be I'm halfway through a building project where I'm framing this, and that's just a like, I'm going to do that. It's an opportunity for you if you want to. I'd say and actually, one of the things that makes it quite interesting in terms of planning is when you plan something, or when the kids want to do a child-led thing, and this is where I think you would get lots of differences of opinion on what they do here, but I'm going to say what I do, and then people can argue with me online, if, for example, I was halfway through a project where I was digging some clay out because I knew I was going to make pinch pots or something, and a group went, can we get some knives out and do some whittling? Right? Now, there's two, I feel like that's a fork in the road where you can either go completely down the playworker facilitator vessel kind of route where you go, shovel goes straight down, my needs are not important, I'm going. Because it's one of those situations where you couldn't dig for clay in a pit and then in a completely unsupervised space be like, they're carving over there. Or the other option, which is what I end up doing when I have my little projects. I'm never doing it for I'm not saying, I'm going to dig for 2 hours and the kids just happen to be here. It's always I'm going to spend 15 minutes of this doing a project for me. But I'll go, I'm just doing this. I'll be there. I'll be over in a bit when I've finished making this. And help me if you want. And those things of I feel like that's my goal, is to get the kids thinking more in terms of adults as three-dimensional people, whereas if you are in state education and have a certain type of home life, you could see all the adults, the major adults in your life, as just facilitators of your need. Just as parents get me food, parents get me clothes, parents take me to school. When I get to school, when I need this, the teacher gets it for me, and then the mealtime assistants do this for me, and all adults just become weirdly subservient.
I could play devil's advocate there and say the opposite, and say that actually children are told to wait, children are told to not now, children are, depending on where they live, who they are, what their family's like, parents might be at work, sit with the screen, just sit with the screen for a bit and wait, and I'll give you some attention in a bit. I'm cooking your tea now, I've got to put your sister to bed now, all the rest of it, and that perhaps for a school might be a place where the adult is different there, and it's a different kind of relationship, and you're told to wait.
So I wonder then if
that's just me being devil's advocate.
No, it is, and I think it's an interesting point, and I wonder whether the difference is the you can join me if you'd like to.
Yeah.
Because that's
I'm doing something fun. I'm not cooking your dinner or doing.
Well, I mean, sometimes they're not fun things. Sometimes it's like, I need to get a load of firewood split. Do you want to give me a hand?
Yeah.
Which is.
Yeah.
That's, I would say, where the difference does lie between you can't help me put your sister to bed, you can't help me mark these books, you can't, those. What I'm doing is a just like, this is perfectly accessible to you if you want to come and do it. And I don't know that I have many projects that I've done here where I would say, there's no way the kids can help me with this, because that is a project that I would say, no, I have to do that outside of work when the kids have gone home.
Yeah.
And it just factors into my planning, and having long-term projects is a big part of lots of children's development, where they perhaps there's less of a it's less common now for children to have big long-term projects that aren't finished in a session, or aren't immediately take-homeable, or aren't that's actually an interesting thing, and possibly one for another session, because I think we're running on a little bit, but that idea of group projects and who gets to take it home, because in the school it's very like, you'll take it. I used to do. I'm just going off on it now. As a teacher, I used to intentionally make up stuff that I knew just moved the problem away from me. So if it was like a group project where they'd built a sphinx or something out of paper mache, and they'd go, right, and I'd explain to the parents, I'd be like, the deal is that George would like it for 2 weeks, and then it's going to come back to school, and Tom's going to have it, and then it's going to go back to George and back to Tom, knowing full well that as soon as that leaves, it's not my issue. George can smash it, do whatever. Tom can then not get it and just go like, okay, well, I can't control this. Cool, goodbye. But I think we've waffled about planning pretty successfully. Is next week the evolutionary play working?
Yes, Bob Hughes.
Oh, fantastic! I
need to get
reading Bob Hughes chat. Guys, we haven't mentioned this before, but if you are listening on any sort of platform that does reviews, it would be really helpful if on iTunes you wrote a little review or gave us some stars. I just wrote, these two people are awful, all they do is complain about the wind every week. That's absolutely fine, but it does help us get out to more people, and to sort of grow the podcast. Or as always, if you have any thoughts, it'd be really good to hear them on the email, childrenoftheforest@outlook.com. Is there anything else you want to say?
Don't think so.
No, cool. Right, we'll see you next week. Bye!